Hello, hello, all those beautiful faces. My name is Stephanie Edmonds. Welcome to Teaching Liberty. To live free, you have to think free. And tonight, we are really going to open our minds up and think about our food supply. I know it's not something we like to think about. I see that long line up the street. I live next to one of the busiest McDonald's in the state. I know people like to drive in there and not think about what they're eating, but tonight we are going to think about it and we are going to talk about it with KT, the truther. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie. I really appreciate it. And wow, right off the bat, talking about McDonald's. Let's go. Okay. My gosh. I have a point right out the gate is talking about convenience, lifestyle, how it's really just cutting us off at the knees. Um, oh man.
I need to
Everything's
talk about
been
it. Talk about it.
everything's been made to like be so quote unquote convenient, but like at what cost? And I feel like people are really lacking the appreciation and losing a lot of connection with their food. Like kids think that avocados come from the store. They don't know where it comes from. People are, will buy their steak or buy their chicken and they don't think twice about what it took to get it, or even tomatoes. I love to garden. It's not always so glamorous as you can see on my X account today. I'm battling with caterpillars, but listen, you could do it on a small scale, you could do it on a large scale. The most important thing to do is learn how to do it. And don't wait until the apocalypse to be like, oh, I've been hoarding all of these seeds and now I'm going to go plant them. Listen, it's not going to grow after apocalypse. Okay. You have to like kind of be prepping now, but even
Right.
not a apocalyptic world, just the serious health hazards that this convenience lifestyle is having on us is, oh man, we're going to be paying the consequences for McDonald's for a long time.
Yeah, and now we're going to get into all the different, like, we have the lab grown meat, and I know there's all sorts of what are these, like the pea protein, like fake burgers for the vegan
Yes.
people, and there's all sorts of different things. I mean, it's been going on for a long time, but I certainly don't think that the kind of crappy food you could say we eat today is the same that we were eating when we were kids, right? It was bad back then, but I feel like things have gotten way worse. I just did a carnivore elimination diet. I'm starting to add a few things back in, but I've had really bad allergies for years. And I knew I was allergic to gluten, or I didn't know, like I found that out a while ago. My sister was actually having issues with psoriasis, and she went to the doctor, and the doctor gave her this like super expensive cream, and her deductible's like several $1,000s. So she's like, I'm gonna be spending all this money on this cream. I'm gonna do some research. And so she did eliminated out gluten and soy and a few other things. And I was like, well, I'm having like a skin reaction and allergies, so maybe I'll try the gluten thing as well. So I cut out the gluten, and that seemed to be fine for a while. But in the last couple years, I just, I feel like I've been having more and more reactions. So I was like, all right, we're just going to eliminate everything out. I did the carnivore thing, and almost immediately within that first week, I could stop taking my daily allergy pill.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, so treating things topically is really important before you treat anything that's topically, unless it's like maybe a mosquito bite or something. It's always great to start with an elimination diet, to really put thought behind what you're eating. There's a lot of people, including myself, so I'm not going to speak for everyone else, but in my circle and myself, right? My own personal experience is we're very we're very quick to like go searching for answers as opposed to just starting at the basics. And before I'll take medicine for pretty much anything, I need to know like what is the root cause. And a quick story about how after my second child, I started having really bad stomach pain. And of course, I went to the doctor because I'm like, this is not normal for me. I don't know what's going on. And, she talks to me for a few minutes and she gives me some medication. She goes, take this for a week and then let me know how you feel. I'm like, well, what is this? She says, oh, it's medication for irritable bowel syndrome. I was like, you think I have irritable bowel syndrome? Like, that's pretty serious. We should probably talk about it. She's like, well, no, not actually. I think that you might be experiencing being lactose intolerant, but this will help manage it. And I was like, but first, why don't I just try not drinking milk, not putting cream in my coffee, and staying away from cheese? Like, why don't I just do those things
You
first?
think?
and that was the solution. And in those 7 days, my symptoms began to heal. Not everyone is so lucky. Some people have more serious things, but usually a reaction on the outside is your body telling you something is wrong on the inside. And so the elimination diet, I love that you did. Carnivore, I'd like to know more about that. I've been through elimination diet by doing just starting with bone broth and then building chicken on that. My sister, has gone through the same thing. So tell me, what is it like to do a carnivore elimination diet? A steak all day or what?
Yeah, basically, carnivore, or it's animal based, so you can eat any animal products and you can go as few or as broad as you want. So it just depends on what you need. And I guess too, like, also what you're ready for, because like there's a mental component to it, and like the idea of like only eating meat all day can be hard. So the idea is to eliminate as much, or as much as you can, but it's meat based, animal based products, so any types of meat, like beef, chicken, pork, fish, eggs, cheese you can have. Though when I did it, I also cut out dairy except for the cream in my coffee, right? And then there's also debates over like whether you can have coffee, whether you can have tea. But again, I just looked at it sort of like it's an elimination diet, and I'm choosing to still keep coffee and tea in my diet. And if I did feel like I needed to eliminate them further, I would, right? Um, so I know some people can just do boiled chicken, right? They can't tolerate all the meats. And so, yeah, I mean, the way that I learned about it is I just went on YouTube and I watched a bunch of videos. And so I know the underlying things, but I'm not to the point where I can repeat them all back in the technical way. There was
No, that's
definitely,
right.
yeah,
And
there
what
was,
you're saying is good. And I want to really just say this first, is that every body is different. So even like you saying pork or fish, there's going to be someone in the comments that say you shouldn't eat this, we shouldn't be telling people what they should and shouldn't do if you're not a nutritionist that's hired. Right.
right.
So we're speaking to our own personal experience, which I love that. And understanding the body is so important. One quick thing I want to say is for people with stomach issues such as ulcerative colitis, and I know this because I've interviewed someone who's very proficient, has even written a book and has classes and courses on ulcerative colitis and how she cured it. She gave me such a mind-blowing picture in my head. What she said was, your stomach, once you've done damage to it or once it is damaged, you have to think of it like when you fall and skin your knee, right? So the first day, it's going to be bad. It doesn't have any protection on there. But as the days progress and the weeks progress, you see it healing and it gets a scab. And then before you know it, it's all the way healed. Now, if you think of your stomach the same way and you're having these, really bad issues, I don't want to get too graphic into it, but we kind of can determine what happens with ulcerative colitis, right? It's your insides are a big scab, like you fell down. And if you do the elimination diet and you don't stick to it for long enough, it's the same as like refalling on that same knee. And so it's going to get right back to being damaged. And so you really have to dedicate for the long haul. And I'd say that's with any kind of lifestyle change you do. It's going to be difficult, but so long as you're journaling, tracking, like, are these things making a significant impact in my life, day in and day out? Where are you in 7 days? Where are you in 14 days? Where are you in 21 days? And so on and so forth. Just so long as you're not feeling significantly worse past the point of,
Right.
like, detoxing from the sugars and all that other stuff, depending on where you are. I would say, you just really have to stick with it, whatever we're doing, in order to heal our bodies. It's definitely not
And
instant.
even if you do fall off, right, you have a craving and you slightly rescab that knee, just forgive yourself and get right back on. Don't continue down and say, oh, well, I messed up one time, so, now it's all over. Who cares? Because I certainly had nights, especially in the beginning, but even too, when you're into it, I was suffering from just the lack of variety. And also, I was almost having trouble eating enough meat. And so I found adding smoked salmon to my meals. Just, it was a different texture. It was like kind of salty, and it helped cut through that super fatty beef and the savoriness of whatever the protein that I was eating. And then also some yogurt. So I guess like that is also dairy, but I got the super high fat yogurt. I think that's another thing that actually goes way back, is the low fat. Low fat is a bunch of nonsense. And that really started, I mean, probably in the 80s before I was born, but definitely all throughout my life. You always, we want to get the low fat, 1% milk. Like, ew, 1% milk is gross, by the way.
Yeah, and this phenomenon, plan, agenda took over. It swept across definitely our nation. I remember growing up, the Diet Cokes, the Slim Fast. That's when Weight Watchers happened. I remember seeing a bunch of, every single thing said reduced fat on it. We had crackers or cookies or whatever. Not that my family could really afford any of those things, but in the grocery store, they were there. I remember specifically seeing it, reduce fat. And then turns out that's a lie. Cholesterol, everything you've been told about cholesterol is a lie. And cholesterol is really not that bad for you. Your body needs a certain amount of cholesterol to be able to function. But we say all these things to say, if you don't get your eating in line and start eating real whole foods, whatever that, well, whole foods means whole foods, okay? But whatever kind of meals you can create through that, and taking away some of these toxic ingredients, I mean, we're just going to be better off for it. Learning to read ingredient labels. I don't even teach my kids about the nutrition facts, because we're beyond that. I tell them, go straight to the ingredients. If it has a seed oil in it, don't get it. If it has a number and a color in it, don't get it. I've eliminated like 95% of food that's available for children. Isn't that crazy? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's all, and they sneak it in there. Coffee creamer. It's not really actually dairy, those coffee creamers. And what it is mostly canola oil, seed oils. So those coffee mates that you guys are buying, it's not, it's so gross. It's like, get real cream. I put heavy whipping cream in my coffee, the
oh,
heavy
that's the good
cream
stuff.
that you can get. But yeah, once you start looking for the seed oils and everything, you cannot unsee it. And I feel like when I go out to eat, unless I'm eating at like a pretty high-end place, I even have trouble, because I'm gonna guess that they're cooking their food in some low-end, canola oil, something like that, and I start to get itchy a little bit. Like, if it's just for one night and I'm just sticking to meat, fine, but I can definitely feel it. And throughout my diet, actually, I got more sensitive to things. I certain brands of ground beef I couldn't tolerate, and certain like deli meats, because that's what I was like, oh, I can, if I'm on the go, I can just go grab a pack of deli meat. No, I have to get like the uncured, organic, like higher end stuff. now, because otherwise if I get that low end stuff, I have a reaction. Or I started adding in just a few things, like avocados I seem cool with, nuts, I started adding in some of those. But when I got this one brand, it was like the ShopRite brand of nuts, I could not eat those ones because I'm gonna guess that they roast them in some oil. But when I get the organic Whole Foods brand, I seem fine with those. So it's like it's just like little things when it's like a drug, right? When you have a high tolerance to alcohol, you have to drink a lot of cans or have a lot of cocktails in order to get that same effect. And then it's like once you haven't had any drinks for a while, you have one glass of wine and you're like feeling tipsy. And it's the same way with food. You've all
Absolutely.
built up these resistances and you don't even realize that you kind of feel like crap or you're having these other reactions. But maybe your reactions aren't acute because you have a little bit of a resistance. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not having other long-term problems build up. But once you start to eliminate that stuff out, and then if you have just a little taste of it, you're like, oh, this
It
isn't
tastes
it.
different. It really does. I like when I switched to organic eggs, I was like, oh, what's the big deal? I'm not going to be one of those people like that say, oh my gosh, is that organic? But now I'm like, if I don't want non-organic eggs. I can taste the difference. They taste weird. And
The yolks, you can tell by the yolks,
yes,
those dark yellow yolks.
they're so much more
And if you
pale.
have a farm near you and you can get them from the farm, get them from the farm. But, you know, again, you got to find obviously what works for you, what you can stay consistent. But summer season is coming, so the farmers market should be more readily available.
Oh, absolutely. Support your local farmers market. I want to say this too, man. We're up against the toxins in the food, the toxins in the air, the toxins in the water, even to the point where, like, I have a water filter on my shower now. If anybody wants the link for that, I can share it after. But it's $40 on Amazon. I went ahead and bought the replacement filter because our water here is so heavily, I mean, I take a shower without it and it smells like bleach. I'm not kidding you. They treat the water so heavy. And I've seen our water piping system is in terrible shape. So I was like, well, if I can eliminate at least some of the toxins, I will. And that's the mindset I think to have. One is understanding what moderation is. We've been kind of brainwashed into thinking moderation is 1, 2, 3 times a week, and that's just simply not true. Again, if you fall off, don't, or you make a decision, oh, if you wanted a piece of cake and you ate a piece of cake, that's fine, but keep it moving. Just like one piece of cake is not going to make you fat, skipping it is not going to make you skinny or whatever it is, the goal that you have in mind. So just be realistic and try not to get overwhelmed by the amount of information that's out there. And if you're focusing on whole foods, it definitely makes it a bit easier. And then I think just the point of that whole thing was just try not to get overwhelmed because we know, especially as a truther, it's rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. But
Right, right.
get a
And
trusted food source and get a meal plan, I think is my very best advice for you.
yeah, and I did want to say this about the organic label. Of course, and I did a whole episode with my girl Queen Bee's Pharmacy about how organic labels are a marketing scheme in and of itself. You have to pay for it. So it's not the end all be all. It doesn't always mean that it's clean, right? They can
Right.
still use certain pesticides and this and that. However, I do think that if you're at the store and you have a choice, especially when it comes to things like eggs or the fruits that don't have the skins on the outside, and perhaps even your meats, although for they say at least beef, I know beef that, if you're buying just the regular or beef versus like you should definitely get the organic chicken. or get it from your farmer. So that's a great point. Thank you, Elizabeth, for bringing that up. Is
Yeah,
organic isn't the end all be all, right? It's best to have that clean food connection, which Elizabeth is always looking out for me, getting me the direct to the source food.
yeah, that's the way
So
to go.
keep that in
Support
mind.
support your local farmers, support your local farmer markets right now, especially. This entire time since COVID, I've been saying these places have taken a beating of being controlled by the government and being shut down and stuff. And you don't want to wait. Let's keep using that apocalypse timeline, right? You don't want to wait until then and be like, oh, where's that girl that I knew was selling soap? Bro, you should have been buying soap from her. You should have been supporting her. Like, you don't need soap this month. Send her $5. Like, the people that are near you that you can get the supplies from, like, I'm not kidding you. Support them. Support them, support them. Don't ever stop, because
Right.
those connections are more valuable than you can possibly imagine.
Right. And more the stuff that's in the store, you don't even exactly know. I remember they came out with that peel. I forget what it's called, right? But they put this, I don't know if it's an injection or something on the outside of like oranges and lemons
Oh,
and even some.
appeal. Right.
Yeah, a peel. That's what it is,
Yeah.
right? And all they have to do is just say, oh, at this store we use a peel. It doesn't have to be necessarily on the direct packet. And then there's, like we talked about, there's all these like vegan alternative things, like where they're like fake. A lot of times they're using oil to
Right.
fill in the canola oil. And then now they're taking even that stuff a step further and they're doing the lab grown meats. So,
I think that most of chicken has been lab grown for quite some time now, and it's only just now making headlines, if you really want my honest opinion. But you can take that with a grain of salt if you want to, and just know that I also don't think bananas are real.
what?
Okay. I don't think
All fruits used to be called bananas. They used to call them like the red bananas, the short
no
bananas,
way.
the long
I had no
bananas.
idea. I had no idea. I mean, I do. Okay, here's a fun fact: is there's like no such thing as a vegetable.
Oh, and why is that?
Because it's just not. Vegetable is actually a culinary term. And it's just like the category of what we consider to be vegetables. But like fruits are real, but vegetables, it's just a culinary term. Isn't that
Okay,
weird? So
they're
like,
just like plants that you can eat, basically.
right. Well, they all have kind of like a different category. So if you name like celery, it's a stalk. Cucumber is a fruit because it has seeds. Tomato is a fruit because it has seeds. So is squash and zucchini. Those are fruits because they have seeds. Spinach is a leaf. A potato is a tuber.
See, and I feel like, these terms, they can be useful, like vegetable can be a useful term, but at the same time, I feel like by losing that connection with all of those words that you just said, it's one less connection we have with what we're actually eating. And
Yeah.
I definitely felt like when I did the carnivore diet, it reset my connection that I had with food, so that when I eat something, I can actually feel how it impacts my body. And I can also know, like, okay, I'm eating a super fatty piece of meat, or I'm eating something that's more lean, or I'm having nuts or seeds or a little bit of fruit. I really like take the time to like feel it in my mouth, like chew it and
Yeah.
all of those things. I'm like,
Oh, what's so funny is our like the way our bodies work is like really so amazing that like the food, like a lot of like fruit or anything that you're going to eat, your body actually starts processing it before you even put it in your mouth because of the smell of the food, the saliva that it creates. So, if you smell something sweet, if you'll notice this, like get a piece of watermelon, smell it, and just think about it for a second. Feel the way the saliva fills in your mouth. That feels a lot different than if I was to say or to give you a dill pickle. You can like almost feel it in your mouth like right away when someone says dill pickle because it's such a potent smell. Same for like meat grilling and stuff like that. So our bodies are really they're just so amazing. Very
Right. We
simple.
need to get reconnected with that instead of, again, relying on the convenience or falling for what I would consider sort of like these traps of vegan, of the lab grown meat. Now, I'm not saying that we should go out and make these things illegal, right? I think that I think that Ron DeSantis made it illegal. Ron DeSantis thinks that he can legislate liberty, which is like kind of a
Right.
oxymoron situation there.
I
Um,
think I think that's a double-edged sword what he did. So I think that he raised awareness about it. But I don't think that we need more governments to tell us what we can and can't. However, maybe if when it is allowed, they'll be more stricter for labeling so people really understand what they're getting. So I do see like some pros and cons to it. And just because Ron DeSantis said they can't have it in Florida doesn't mean that they're not going to feed this to the people of California. So we'll get to see the biological effects of that lab grown meat has on people when California allows it and so on and so forth. From a biological standpoint, I think this is going to wreak havoc on our gut. They are using animal proteins to create this like lab grown meat. But there's also other things like in beef, they're using like meat glue and all these. Oh my gosh. Oh my
I
gosh.
will. Why don't we watch that video clip that you had sent me that kind of gets into some of this stuff? I do just want to mention one thing before that is so Bill Gates, and I'm sure he's not the only one, he's just sort of the one that's out there in the news. And that means that we probably need to dig a little deeper and see who else is doing this. But he's buying up all this farmland, and instead of growing things on it, he's out here pushing this lab grown meat. And so if you know if he's pushing it, that there's something up.
Right, exactly. So yeah, we can go to this clip. This is Jack Wang. The video starts out, he's just talking about a bit of the science behind it. He talks about this article that's been written. It's a short video, so I definitely recommend you guys go watch the full clip. One of the parts I found most interesting is what we're going to play here today. And he's talking about, oh, and he also talks about if lab grown meat is actually sustainable, because I heard that argument that this will feed a lot of poor people. Why we are so comfortable with giving people that live in poverty garbage just kind of blows my mind. And these are the same people that think that they're doing what's best for humanity. I won't get into that. But anyways, it's going to wreak havoc on our bodies. And let's listen to some of these chemicals and where did the ingredients really come from?
2 bits of reagents that we very routinely use in a lab to culture a tiny little bit of animal cells. So these are cells you can buy from large tissue banks. They are not collected from live animals. They were what we call immortalized. These are cells that are designed to grow and keep growing. Often they're isolated from patient tumor samples, patients who have cancer. Those tumors are donated to science. And the good thing about tumor cells in this context is that tumor cells, they are engineered to grow and grow. That's their programming. They want to overgrow and double because we need a lot of cells to work with to be able to study these processes again and again and again. But they need a lot of food, and that food is very expensive. 2 reagents I'll show you. The first one is DMEM, D-M-E-M, and this is sold from a number of companies, but this is from Thermo Fisher Scientific. This red nutrient media has a lot of different things in it, including glucose, including sugars, which allows these cells to be living in a kind of semi-hydrated environment. So it's not completely dehydrated throughout its lifespan, and also gives it some sugar and other nutrients. You can see that 1 liter of it costs about 100 Australian dollars. But really, if you're making giant vats of meat to be sold across the country of the United States, you will need way more than a liter of this liquid. Right? You will need thousands and thousands of liters. So this cost starts going up. This price is not for the cells. This is just for the food to give the cells. I'm not a farmer, so I don't know how much chicken feed costs, but this is pretty expensive chicken feed. Right? This is $100 for 1 liter, and you can scale that up exponentially depending on how much chicken you want to engineer. This is just the tip of the iceberg because this is actually not enough nutrients for most of the cells to live in. The cells need another layer on top of that most of the time. They need something that's called serum, and the most common serum that we use in a tissue culture lab is something called fetal bovine serum. And it is essentially serum that has a lot of factors that promote growth in it. Growth factors, hormones, lipids, sugars, vitamins, proteins that help those cells attach to surfaces and keep growing very comfortably. And this is the most common one, and it's very expensive as well. It's usually isolated from cows of bovine. You can see that there's a long drawn out process of collecting this serum. You've got to then screen it because you do not want toxins, you do not want bacteria to be within this serum. You're giving it to cells that are living in a flask, so they're pretty fragile anyway. This is a very expensive process for both collecting it and packaging it and assuring that it has a certain amount of quality assurance. If we look at the cost of this, for half a liter, we're talking 800 to 900 Australian dollars. That price has gone up. It used to be $500. So we're talking for a liter of this serum, about $1,000, in excess of $1,000 for this serum. So the combination of the nutrient media and the serum, when you add those two things together, we're talking thousands of dollars just for a tiny little flask of cells that we work with in a tissue culture lab. If you're talking giant metal vats, man, that cost starts escalating. And again, I'm not a farmer, but that is some pretty expensive chicken feed. The cost of it will be very, very interesting to watch out for going forward, because we know as scientists doing these experiments that culturing cells is not cheap, and we're working with much smaller volume of cells than people trying to make it into this chicken meat that you can sell all over the world. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, as well as Google Podcasts.
So they're selling it as a less expensive alternative, but it's actually more expensive, is what he's saying.
Right. Not even less expensive. Just them. So energy efficient, right? That's the whole point of us giving up meat, is to save the planet, right? I mean,
Okay. So maybe they're thinking about it on a larger scale. They're not thinking about the cost of the chicken itself. They're like thinking about the cost of the globe. Okay.
right. Which is, it's not better, because chickens can live outside. They can live in little barns. You can't tell me that, Farmer Bob running his tractor and moving some hay and getting some chicken feed is worse for the environment than these labs and the incubators that it needs and the test tubes that it needs and the manpower to watch it and the
Also,
quality.
cancer cells.
You heard that, right? You heard that, right? And then all the other things that they're taking from that, as well as all for growth, to get this liquid to turn into a jelly that's going to turn into a chicken. This podcast right here, you guys might want to actually download it, because what you're going to start to see is more and more, different podcasters and so-called scientists come out and talk about how great it is. I watched another one that came on right after this, and this guy was just a dork, in my opinion. And he's like, oh, da da da. And they're taking him through the factory and stuff. And never did he point out these things of like, this is a lot of manpower. Like, these chemicals cost more than it does to feed a chicken and kill a chicken and process a chicken. Like, we've been doing it this way for such a long time. Now, I don't want to see our food mass produced. But I'll take a mass-produced Tyson chicken over whatever the hell this is. And he's like eating it, and he's like, it does taste like chicken. I'm like, oh God. Like what
Right.
happened?
And not to mention too, like, farming is actually if you do regenerative farming, which I guess is just like actual farming, not the industrialized farming that we do now, but we'll say regenerative farming just so people can differentiate. If you do it right, it's actually good for the soil. It's good for the land. It's good for like the whole ecosystem. I was just reading a book with my son tonight. It was like The Diary of a Worm. And
that's cute.
yeah, and it talks about how one of the things, I mean, they do all sorts of silly things in the book that worms obviously don't do, but it begins and ends with the idea that even though I'm such a small thing, Mother Nature will always love me, right? We're so important to the earth. And so it's if you don't go through that whole life cycle of growing it, of taking care of it, of picking it and processing it in the correct way, you're actually taking away from the earth. So it's like they're telling us almost the exact opposite. They're like, oh, that's bad for the earth, but if we grow it in a lab, it's actually good for the earth. It's just total nonsense.
I just don't understand all the people that buy into we have limited resources, people that advocate for population control. Why are people so willing to end their family and not to just basically stop their family, as opposed to practice ways of being conscious and stepping outside of a world that's like using overconsumption? Sorry, I got tied up there.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I mean, again, I think it goes back to what we opened with just that fast paced, convenient lifestyle that we've gotten used to. And then in that, you don't know anything else, right? You get into that habit, and it's just like you build your own little world around you. And if you don't know that there's anything outside of that world, then you can't do it. And that food actually makes you dumb. I know I feel like that definitely since I've taken my eating to the next level with the carnivore diet, my mind feels much clearer. I definitely remember it too when I did whole 30. I don't know, I was a teacher at that time, so it was in BC times, before COVID times. And I definitely remember that difference in just the way, just feeling more agile in my mind. And I'm feeling that again too when I'm on the carnivore. I don't feel sluggish. I feel more alert. I feel like I have more energy overall throughout the day. Like I'm not dipping as much,
Yeah.
up and downs. So I feel like when you just build yourself that world, you don't even realize there's anything outside of it, or you don't even realize what eating healthy is. I know a lot of times I see people that'll be like, oh, I'm trying to eat healthy, and then I like look in their cart and I'm like, all right, like I guess it could be worse.
Right.
But like it's still a lot of packaged foods, but it's like the healthy brand or something, like the
Reduce
one that's
fat.
marketed to be, yeah, it's like
Right.
reduced fat yogurt. And I'm like, oh, maybe you should have gotten the full fat.
Right. I mean, it's really difficult to not feel bombarded too, because that's really all by design. So everything that's happening in our world right now, between war, political wise, people thinking that other people hate them just, based on whatever, and there's a lot of isolation happening now. And I guess I just really want to use this opportunity to tell people that like life is great. Life is really, really great. And I would just want to encourage people to find a purpose, something they enjoy doing, and a way to contribute and find their community, because everything we're up against right now is meant to propel us into further isolation. Like the people that are in control of what happened during COVID, that was like their ultimate goal, was to isolate us. That's why it was called social distancing and not physical distancing. They loved shutting things down. They loved telling you can't buy your seeds. Like, why was the garden section closed? Like, we have to really like wake up to these things and really be aware of the language that they use. And just understand that not everything needs to be a fight. So if you like to debate, that's great, but also find your community of people that you have things in common with, because life is good.
Yeah, this is something that Elizabeth and I have talked about, is just setting up your local network, even beyond your farmer, knowing where your water source is, knowing the routes, right? Without your GPS, know how to get around, just know what everybody's skill is, and think about if those like lockdowns that led to those supply chain issues were way, way worse, right? And would you be able to survive? I guess toilet paper was really like the hardest thing. Although, I said this on Layla's space the other day, I'm even having trouble with toilet paper. Now that I detoxed, I swear to God, it is like it's throwing off my balance. I gotta find an alternative to that. I don't even want their toilet paper, so you can
I
keep
know.
it.
Man, everything from all of your hygiene products, your feminine hygiene products. Yeah, I mean, it's really everything. It's really everything. Look, I have makeup on for this podcast. I put it on 5 minutes before, and when I'm done, I'm going to take it right back off because I don't even like to wear makeup anymore.
Yeah, I know. I was never into the makeup thing, but even now, when I like think about like doing a skincare routine, I'm like, I think I'm better off without it. I just go straight tallow, Queen Bee's Pharmacy tallow. I got it in the description. Use my code TeachingLiberty to save 15% off.
Yeah, the beef tallow is the way to go.
Yes, you can cook with it. You can put it on your skin. And actually, I did this deer processing class, so where you learn how to. We didn't kill the deer. They brought the deer already dead. But you learn how to cut it open and take the skin off and cut out all the organs and use all the different parts of the deer. I never felt better than after that weekend. Like my skin felt so tight and vibrant and just being out there and being with animals. So I think that's another thing too. Now, we can't all go out and kill animals all the time, but certainly like touching your food, cooking with your food, being comfortable with your food and not like, ew, it's raw meat, like, and getting your kids used to being around the food and cooking the food and understanding where it really comes from. It's the whole lifestyle from as close to the beginning as you can get it, right? We can't all be out here raising chickens and all that, but as close as you can get to the beginning, and then just very consciously bringing yourself all the way through, when you're eating. Sometimes you got to eat on the go. I get it. I'm a busy mom going all over the place, but the more you can actually just like sit there, think about what you're eating, really like digestion starts the minute that you put it in your mouth, and that whole process.
Yeah. So I actually heard that when you grow your own vegetables from you, like touching the seeds and everything, that the plant actually knows that and like gets your DNA. And
Ooh.
so like the plants that you grow are like specifically to heal you, which listen, so the tomato plants I have were not grown from seeds. And right now they're being bombarded by caterpillars. So, okay, I don't know what that means for me. Okay, but and you talk about touching your food and all that other stuff. Listen, I'm not a fan of raw meat. I can do beef, steak, and all of that, but like raw chicken, like I said, I just don't think that chicken has been real for a very long time.
So you think that most of the chicken is lab grown? Like I don't like
It's lab grown or over processed, or they're injecting them with so much stuff before and after.
I know there was like recently that Tyson Foods whistleblower who's been out there making a splash about how the conditions are really nasty in a lot of these what is it called?
Like the
Just
processing
the processing plants, the industrial places where they just keep them in the dark, all cooped up together. So I always err on the side of getting beef to getting chicken, unless I'm getting like a organic free range chicken, or definitely if I'm getting it straight from the farmer and I know that it was, unless birds are fake too, I don't know. Isn't that one of them?
Yeah, those are government cameras. So government spy cameras, spy drones, whatever you want to call them, right? That's what I'm wondering, like, why aren't the birds eating the caterpillars? And it's because the birds are fake.
Maybe some of them. I don't know, man. We have a lot of birds in my backyard.
I don't
bird watchers.
All birds are probably not even most of
No,
them.
but I would imagine too that probably the animals are impacted by our food system too, right? Because they're eating whatever's in the ground. They're eating our trash. Don't feed the birds at the park. I yell at people all the time. They bring down their crappy white bread And usually they themselves, I'm like, look at you. All right. It's not good for you. And you want to feed it to these wild animals. Like, they're going to be fine. They're going to be able to get their own food. They don't need your highly processed, bleached white bread that you didn't need. All right. Sorry. I just always got to throw that out there. It just makes me so mad. Oh, well, so
I'm
don't.
here. Sorry.
Okay. No, it's all good. Don't feed the birds or the
No.
fake birds.
No, don't feed the birds. Don't feed them bread. Yeah, I mean, environmental toxins are a real thing. I live in the deep south, the swamp. We have so many. What is on my TV now? Oh, it's an ad. I was like, what happened to the fireplace? We have so many mosquitoes here. They're constantly spraying something all of the time, and it drives me nuts. Which I mean, like, I don't like mosquitoes just as much as the next person. Oh, I can't even turn it off. The government heard me. Yeah.
They're messing with you.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, that's it. No more fireplace for you.
I like those long sleeve like sun shirts, where they're like light
Yes.
material, but they give you some protection from the sun if you're going to be out for long periods of time. Same thing. Like I like to wear like longer pants that are like light in the summer. You can feel the breeze. That's how I try to get my
We
protection.
live in two different areas, my friend. That's not going to happen here. It's not going to happen here. Like, I wear the minimal amount of clothes that's appropriate for a modest woman such as myself, the bare minimum. It's so hot. There is no breeze. Even when you ain't got no pants on, there's no breeze. That's why the mosquitoes are so bad. So, yeah. And then there's even GMO mosquitoes, Steph. Do you
Oh,
remember
right.
that?
Well, I saw the ones where they want to do like the COVID or whatever was the COVID shot or just like some
Yeah.
vaccinations through mosquitoes.
Yes, yes. And that, I mean, the mosquito swarms that hit Texas, was that not last year before? And like all the GMO mosquitoes and stuff like that. And then we have to think about things like corn is mostly GMO here in the United States. And you have to think about the bees. And then how does that affect the bees when they're getting pollen off of GMO crops? Like, there's so much to this that we're in so much shit that maybe only an apocalypse is the way to reset it. I don't really hope for an apocalypse. I don't know why I'm stuck on that just specifically for your show.
I feel like it's an imagery that we can understand, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, I do think that nature is super powerful. And we probably have more hubris about our impacts on it than we actually have. And of course, the narrative spins it up with all this global warming and all of this. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have any impact, right? That doesn't mean that we're not impacting the animals and kind of messing with their systems
Right.
in certain ways too. But I definitely think if we were to have some sort of reset, not the great reset that they want to do, but something where we just pulled back on all of this intervention, that we would find nature would reset itself within actually a short period of time.
I agree with that. And I can give you a very good example is okay, so when everything was shut down for COVID, like even the national parks were closed, right? There was like very minimal action out there. Well, I got married in 2022, right?
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So in 2022, I got married. So this is like right after all the major COVID things. The first like fall, and people are out. So we went to the Smoky Mountains and the national park and all of that. And we were just hearing stories. First of all, bears gave no shits that we were there. I'm talking like mama bear and cubs right over here. I mean, all the animals just didn't care because this was the batch. You know how we talk about the COVID kids, the kids that were born during COVID, they're just built a little different. These animals that were born during COVID are definitely built different. They don't know. And they talk about them going and just like opening doors, getting into people's houses and all this other stuff. But I mean, they were just everywhere, not like they know when the groups of people are coming and they're off scurried someplace else. They did not give a shit. We saw so much wildlife. It was unreal. It was beautiful, but it was also just very different than anything I've experienced in a national park. I've been going to national parks like my entire life, and I've never seen animals so active before, but they just didn't care we were there.
Yeah, so I do think that we shouldn't get super overwhelmed about all the things, right? There's so many things out there to know. Now, of course, knowing, right? Educating yourself is important, but also at the same time, just like with your diet, you don't want to put so much pressure on yourself to be the perfect person that you end up just like freezing in place. You got to start small, build up, and then also you got to find that balance between what works for you and what is like the healthiest option that you can go for.
Right. There's
And
a
so,
lot to consider. So somebody just tagged me in this newly developed scientific breakthrough blood testing where it actually can like penetrate, I don't know, like the nucleus of your blood cells so they can really find out what you're deficient in, and so on
okay.
and so forth. That might sound a little chaotic. I only learned about it just a short time before I came onto this show, but they had just tagged me in something saying like this is the answer to find out what you're deficient in. But your body type, your blood type, what region you're from, what region your ancestors are from, like all of these things play a role into how we should be feeding our body. So I know the carnivore diet has a lot of benefits for a lot of people, but it's not going to be great for everyone if their family lineage is people that grew up on farms and ate mostly vegetables and fruits and all of these other things, as well as like people that are closer to oceans and seas might have grew up on more fish, so they should probably have more of a fish-based diet, Mediterranean diet. There's really a lot to consider, even down to your blood type and what different how your genes are operating, because you could have different gene mutations or abnormalities within your body, within your cellular structure, as well as other conditions, things that might have really torn up your stomach, your intestines, your heart. How often are you working out? How's your heart rate? Like, my God, like the list kind of goes on and on, but that's not to say for everybody to start learning what's good for everyone else. But knowing some of these things are, I think, in my opinion, important to consider when you're trying to decide what's best for you. I'm very cautious of just following whatever meal plans are available. Like, listen, I'll go to YouTube University just as much as the next person, right? I'm like graduated. But we just need to be careful when we're considering information, because it only takes one fast talker to tell you like you shouldn't be drinking water, and because
Right.
you weren't born with a cup, even though your hands make a cup, or something crazy. Every day it's something
I got
crazy.
my big cup right here. I got my listen, I had the Stanley Cup before it was cool, all right?
Right? Hey, I was shocked at how light those actually are. I was like, how does people carry around these big old metal cups full of drink? I'm like, I wouldn't even be able to carry that. But my mother-in-law just got one. I was like, oh, they're actually pretty light.
No, I mean, I like this thing because, like, I drink a lot of water. I've always drank a lot of water. So, and like, if you go around my house, you'll see like all my water glasses. But I like this because it's so big. It's like 40 ounces, I think. And so I can not have to fill up my water cup every 2 seconds.
Do you put salt in your water?
I do not put salt in my water, but I do use real salt on my food. That's another thing, is that the salt that we're eating doesn't have iodine in it. And a lot of times it's just like MSG, which is that like laboratory made salt, right?
Right.
But you should buy real salt. Yes, you should buy real salts, and I well salt my food. So I probably could do better on getting it in my water, maybe trying that out.
It
I
just
don't
depends
know.
on if you feel hydrated or not. You said you drink a lot of water, so that could be out of habit. Or if you deal with a lot of stress, drinking water actually can calm a lot of anxiety. If you have anxiety, probably more likely to have a dry mouth and feel like you're thirsty all of the time. So there's a couple of different things in that. But I was just asking because I started incorporating the salt in my daughter's water. She does the Celtic salt or the packets in the morning because, well, she was just recently diagnosed with POTS. She was having upwards to like 15 episodes a day of like feeling dizzy.
Oh my, oh
Yeah,
wow.
it was. Yeah, that's a lot. It was a lot, like 15 to 20 times a day. So pretty much every time she was standing up, she was feeling dizzy. And it all kind of came to a head when she got really sick with, I guess, like the flu-like symptoms. To where I was like, okay, like
Oh, it's obviously COVID.
right.
Long
Yeah.
COVID.
I was like, we obviously just don't have this under control. And so I needed some more information. But we have a really great pediatrician who was able to like walk us through kind of just what was going on with her and doing like the heart rate tests and stuff to give us a better answer. And once we got it pinpointed down, now she's down to like 1 or 2, if any, per day, just so long as she keeps up
Right.
with the salt and
Yeah,
the
I mean,
water.
for kids, like you said earlier, the foods that are marketed to kids, and that often as a parent, when you're just like, all right, we got to get my kids something to eat real quick, or the snacks, it's so much crap. And the other thing is the juice.
Oh yeah.
Like whether kids they always want juice, right? They want that hit of sugar, but I also notice a lot of adults drink, well, the soda, the juice, and you don't realize how much sugar that you are taking in that thing. And if you want to start somewhere, start by eliminating the juice and the soda. Just drink water, have your coffee. Try eliminating, weaning off the sugar in your coffee. Like, I
Yeah.
can't even put sugar in my coffee anymore. It's been years since I could put sugar in my coffee. It's like I like almost spit it out when there's sugar in my coffee. I'm like, oh, like,
It's
what is this? It's like,
I switched to mushroom coffee mostly. And
okay, I
so
used to get my second cup is mushroom. I usually do one real cup, and then
yeah.
later on in the afternoon, I'll have a cup of mushroom coffee.
Yeah, and then that and the herbal teas, anything organic. I mean, you can really get, again, your farmer's market, or if you have a garden, drying out some herbs and doing different combination. That's been really, really fun for us. And just, I really got sad the other day thinking about, like, I wasted all this time not drinking tea, and I love it. I really love it. I was such a just coffee person. Coffee and water is all I would ever have. And then once I started doing teas, I was like, man,
And the kids love it too. My son has really
yeah.
gotten into tea at his homeschool. The lady who runs it, she'll do little tea ceremonies with them. And it's like a nice way to sort of start the day, or if they need a little reset, make some tea and just have a little time. So they'll light the candle, they'll dong their little bowl and, get some zen in. And again, it's an alternative to giving them juice, because it
Yeah.
has some flavor. You can add a little bit of honey to it, so it still has a little hit of sugar. But it's, again, I think when you have something that is from a more natural source, and you can also control the sugar, it's not just like 32 grams
Right. Like
blasted in there.
instead of drinking orange juice, just eat an orange,
Right. Yes,
Deal with green
exactly.
tea. I
For my
love
son,
watermelon.
for my
I'm a
son's
lemon.
birthday, I made him a fruit cake. So it was like watermelon was the base, and then we did a bunch of different, strawberries and blueberries and melon on the outside and stuff. And so obviously it's still a lot of sugar, but at the same time you're getting some of the fiber that's with it. And I think getting it straight from the source of the fruit is definitely going to be preferable to having that piece of cake, like that traditional piece of cake that's like all the carbs and then all the sugar and then the frosting on top. So
Right.
we're not preaching abstinence here. we're preaching be smart about your source, and then also be smart about how much. We've pretty much cut out dessert too at my house. Every once in a while, when we get a few cookies from here or there, but I won't buy it at the store. It started because I'm just like, why am I spending an extra $10 on dessert and everything's so freaking expensive? But also I was like, we just don't need it. You don't need to have a hit of sugar before you go to bed.
Right, exactly. That's really kind of like a good place for me to land it, at least, would be, just simply not buying those things, sticking to sitting down, looking at what you have, making a meal plan, going grocery shopping. My husband, thank God. See, I'm saying all this like I'm some professional. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm telling you what he does on Sunday. I am not the most involved, but I'm so very thankful that he does it. And when I was on my own, I did it too, but he is an amazing cook, pretty much chef, and he's taken over all of that. And it's amazing that how much better we can stay on budget when we're doing meal planning, how great it is for the kids. My kids go to school with hot lunch like almost every day of the week. I just did a review on thermoses if anybody would like to see that. Nobody on X was like too wildly interested, but I think it's just the crowd that I'm in. But I feel like things like that are important to share. And I'm not sponsored. I don't have an Amazon link for where you can buy the thermos that I prefer, because there's too much of that happening right now. So maybe in the future, but I prefer that people know that when I'm telling you something, that it's my honest opinion. And I want to continue to build that trust with my audience, no matter where I go, is that I'm just always going to give you my honest opinion over who I think will like the information, or that I'm being paid by someone. See, I even talk about mushroom coffee, and most people don't know that I manage 4 coffee shops.
Oh,
So.
okay. Nice.
And we don't sell mushroom coffee.
I recently got sent some mushroom coffee. I'm forgetting off the top of my brain who sent it to me.
Was it Rise or
It was
Mudwater?
Rise. Yes, Rise. Shout out to Rise. They sent me some mushroom coffee, and I think I tried some different mushroom coffees, and theirs, I feel like it has like a much more like nutty, earthy tones
Yes.
than some of the other ones. I dig it. So I wanted to share real quick your X, right? It's called Twitter,
Right.
X.
Yes, X. My
Freaking
X
X,
account.
man.
I know
It's Louisiana Squad. I also have it linked down in the description below. You do spaces, right?
Yep.
Do you have any other channels that you do as well?
Yeah, so I actually have a podcast. I just jumped back into it after taking a short break. We mostly talk about health. So thank you so much for having me on your show. I am not accustomed to always being a star of the show, right? I bring on super interesting people that are either proficient or professional in whatever topic of theirs, and that's what we talk about. So we just start out from like a base understanding of whatever their topic is, and I ask some pretty good questions. I get told to ask good questions all the time.
Well,
And
you think outside, like you have a very open mind, right? You don't just stay within that box that you're supposed to stay within. And so I think that you ask better questions and you come from different angles when you're able to sort of get outside that mainstream. So
yeah, so asking questions is like one of my favorite things to do, even if I'm listening to other people's podcasts, or if I see something on TV or a documentary or something, I ask questions out loud, just because like the thought is that big in my head. I'm just like, what do you mean by blah, blah, blah? And so that way I can go and like research it or drop a comment someplace, or I want to participate in what it is I'm learning. So anyway, so bring on a lot of special guest speakers that are proficient or professional in different health topics. Every now and again, we'll do a deep dive into politics or people that are related to politics, just because I can't stay away from politics. It grabs me by my hair and pulls me back into this fight, because I do think that fighting for our country is very important. But I mostly like to focus on health and gardening and stuff like that. So you can check that out. We're on Spotify. I usually stream it on X, on Rumble, on YouTube, and things like that. And my next episode coming out is actually going to be about stress and anxiety. Not clinical stress and anxiety, but how can we manage our stress and anxiety in a post-apocalyptic world? I might name it that. I can talk about it. But yeah, I just think that the Bidenomics and the price of everything and everything that we've been through, I think we're dealing with a lot of stress and a lot of unresolved stress. We're walking around with tense shoulders and clenched jaws, staring at our device, consuming information all of the time. But what can we do, right? But what can we do to just kind of like settle down and slow down and help people live a better life? And that's
And
what
I hope that the white pill of this podcast, I know we talked about a lot of crazy stuff, but the white pill is, if you do slow down and just find little ways every day to connect more with your food and how you process it and how you eat it, that can bring you more joy, lower your stress, and make the journey more fun. So I appreciate you coming on. I hope everybody goes over, follows you on X, checks out your podcast. I highly recommend it. And you already know, until next time, make sure that you think free, live free, and give all the glory to God.